Emily Parker never imagined her life would feel this quiet. For years, her home in a quiet neighborhood outside Seattle had been full of noise. Her husband, Daniel, humming while making coffee. Friends visiting on weekends, laughter drifting from the living room. But after Daniel's sudden passing, silence became her closest companion. It followed her from the early morning hours to the late nights. Sitting at the edge of her bed, settling on the empty side where Daniel once slept. She had grown used to moving slowly, speaking softly, and pretending she was fine. Her stepson Ethan visited once or twice a month, trying to help where he could. He was 23, a university student studying mechanical engineering. And he carried himself with a seriousness that didn't match his age. He resembled Daniel in the shape of his eyes and the way he listened before speaking. But Emily never expected him to understand the kind of loneliness she carried. She thought he only came out of respect for his father. One rainy afternoon, after a long shift at the small public library where she worked, Emily came home expecting the same quiet house she had known for months. She walked in with her damp coat clinging to her shoulders and her hair loose from the weather. But the moment she stepped into the living room, she froze. The entire room looked different. The old, dark beige walls she had always complained made the house feel gloomy, were now halfway painted a warm cream color. Furniture was pushed aside. Plastic sheets covered the floor, and right in the center of the room stood Ethan on a silver ladder, paintbrush in hand, headphones around his neck. He turned when he heard her keys drop. "Oh, Mealy," smiled, a little breathless but proud. "You're home." Emily blinked, not trusting what she was seeing. "What? What are you doing?" Ethan climbed down carefully, wiping a streak of paint off his arm. "You told Dad once that this room always felt too dark." I remembered. I thought maybe a change would help. She hadn't talked about paint colors in years. She barely remembered that moment herself. Yet somehow Ethan had. Emily looked around, noticing how much brighter the room already felt. The cream color reflected the small amount of light coming through the cloudy windows, giving the house a softness it had lost. She felt something warm push against her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. He shrugged lightly, walking to the paint tray to dip his brush again. "I know, but it's no trouble. And I like helping you." The way he said it, gentle, sincere, made her feel like someone was finally seeing her again. She sat on the couch, still unsure what to do with the emotion building in her. She watched him paint for nearly an hour, noticing how focused he was, how carefully he moved, how he kept checking her face after each stroke as though wanting her approval. He didn't paint carelessly. He painted like this mattered. When Ethan took a break, he walked over with an easy smile. "What do you think? Too bright?" Emily shook her head. "No, it's perfect. Really perfect." He nodded, relieved. "Good. I was worried you might think I overstepped." Overstepped. That was the last thing on her mind. What surprised her was how comforting it felt to have someone do something thoughtful just for her. After Daniel died, people stopped treating her like someone who needed care. They assumed she had recovered. They assumed she didn't need help. But Ethan didn't assume anything. He simply saw what needed doing and did it while he went back to painting. Emily found herself studying him not romantically, not then, but with the deep awareness of someone who suddenly realizes they are not as alone as they believed. Ethan had grown from the shy teenager she once knew into a young man with calm eyes and a steady presence. He had Daniel's patience but carried it differently, almost softer. After finishing the second wall, Ethan stepped off the ladder and rubbed his wrist. "I'm going to get the rollers washed. The water pressure downstairs is better." Before he left, he hesitated. "Emily, can I ask you something?" She looked up. "Of course." He leaned against the doorframe, looking unsure for the first time that day. "How are you really doing?" Not the answer you give the neighbors. The real one. Emily opened her mouth, but no sound came out. No one had asked her that in months. Not like they meant it. She swallowed, feeling a sudden sting in her eyes. "Some days are hard," she admitted. "Some days I feel like I'm just moving through the hours." Ethan nodded slowly, his expression softening. You don't have to carry everything alone. Okay, Emily's breath caught. That simple sentence hit her harder than she expected. It felt like someone had put a hand on her heart and reminded it that it was allowed to beat again. Ethan didn't stay for her reaction. He walked downstairs to rinse the paint supplies, leaving her alone in the half-finished living room. She stared at the walls, at the soft cream color, at the gentle energy he had brought into the house. For the first time in a long time, the home didn't feel like a museum of her grief. It felt like a place where something new could happen. When Ethan came back up, he dried his hands on a towel. I was thinking, he said, almost casually, maybe I could stay here for a short while. Just until you feel a little steadier. My apartment is fine, but I'd rather be here if you need anything. Emily froze. He wasn't asking with obligation. He wasn't trying to replace Daniel. He simply wanted to support her. Still, the idea of someone else living in the house, again sharing meals, sharing space, bringing life back to rooms that had been silent made her heart race. Ethan, you don't have to, I know, he interrupted gently. I want to. His voice carried something steady, something grounding, and it shook her more than she expected. It had been so long since someone wanted to stay beside her without expecting anything in return. She didn't give him an answer right then. She was too stunned, too overwhelmed by the sudden shift in her life. But deep inside her chest, something warm and hopeful began to grow, spreading slowly into corners of her heart she thought had closed forever. And that moment, quiet, unexpected, filled with possibility, was the beginning of everything that would change her life. Ethan moved in that weekend. The spare room, once a silent storage space, transformed into a comfortable small bedroom for him. Emily watched quietly as he unpacked, neatly placing books, clothes, and small personal items on the shelves and drawers. It felt strange at first. He was here in her house, sharing her world, yet he did it naturally, as if he belonged. Emily tried to remind herself he was just helping, that his presence didn't change anything about her life. Still, she noticed how different the air felt, how the house suddenly seemed warmer and alive. From the first day, Ethan didn't just stay in his room. He cooked simple dinners, sometimes pasta or grilled chicken, leaving enough for both of them. He repaired a leaky faucet in the kitchen and replaced a broken light in the hallway without being asked. On evenings, when the rain poured down hard, he would suggest walks under the covered porch, offering her an umbrella and his steady company. Emily hadn't realized how much she had missed ordinary, quiet companionship until she noticed herself laughing against small, hesitant laughter, but real. Days passed quickly. Ethan's presence became a rhythm she didn't resist. He was careful, never overstepping, always checking in, always present without being controlling. He asked her about work at the library, about her favorite books, even about her garden plans. Emily found herself sharing stories she hadn't spoken aloud in months. Memories of Daniel surfaced not in a painful way, but as gentle reminders that life had been full once and could be again. Ethan listened with patience, asking questions that showed he genuinely cared, not out of obligation, but from interest. One evening, after they had spent hours organizing the garage, Emily realized how tired she was. She sank onto the couch, feeling the soreness in her muscles and the calm in her chest. Ethan sat opposite her, sipping water, wiping his forehead with a towel. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just watched her, quietly, the way someone notices another person's smallest movements. "Emily," he said finally, his voice low, careful. "I know I shouldn't say this, but I like being here with you. Not just helping. I enjoy it. Being part of your days." Emily's heart skipped. He looked at him, unsure whether to respond. He was young, yes, and step-sudden, yet his words struck a chord. They were honest, gentle, without pressure. She wanted to tell him she felt the same, that she had begun waiting for his company, but fear held her back. Fear that what she felt was wrong, that it was confusing, that it could never be allowed. So she only nodded softly, letting the moment hang between them. Over the next few days, their closeness grew naturally. He would hand her a warm towel after she did the dishes or brush a strand of hair from her face while they painted a room. Each gesture was small but full of meaning. Emily noticed herself leaning into his presence, catching herself searching for him in the mornings, appreciating the way he organized the living room or fixed a squeaky door. Life that had felt heavy with grief began to feel lighter, infused with moments of unexpected tenderness. One evening, while preparing dinner together, a moment came that neither of them expected. Ethan reached for the same spice jar as Emily. Their hands touched, and she pulled back instinctively. The sudden closeness made her heart pound in a way she hadn't experienced in years. He froze as well, and for a brief second the kitchen was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. Sorry, he said softly, stepping back. There was no awkwardness in his tone, only a quiet honesty. Emily shook her head. No, it's fine, she whispered, but her mind raced. She realized that beneath her grief, beneath the loneliness, something fragile and confusing was awakening. She had tried to ignore it, pretending it was nothing. But the truth pressed against her chest in the simplest ways through a touch, a glance, a shared laugh. After dinner, they washed the dishes together, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. Ethan leaned against the counter, watching her work. Emily, he said finally, voice almost a whisper. I know I'm not supposed to feel this way, but I do. I like being close to you. More than I should, maybe. Her hands paused, water dripping from the sponge. She turned to him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes. It mirrored her own feelings, the hesitation, the longing, the fear of crossing a line. Ethan, Stu started, but no word seemed adequate. Instead, she let a moment pass, filled with a quiet recognition that their hearts were speaking to each other in ways they couldn't yet name. That night, Emily lay awake in her bedroom, staring at the ceiling. It's a quiet house, once suffocating, now felt alive with possibilities. Her mind replayed moments from the day, the way Ethan smiled when he offered her food, the way he asked how she really felt, the brush of his hand in the kitchen. Her chest ached with a mix of longing and guilt. She knew she couldn't ignore the growing bond between them, yet she feared the social judgment. The complexity of their situation, the shadow of grief that still lingered. But sleep eventually came, carrying with it a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in months. She dreamed of simple things, walking in the park with Ethan, sharing coffee in the mornings, laughing without fear. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to imagine a future that included someone else in her quiet, grieving heart. The next morning, she found a note on the kitchen table in Ethan's handwriting. Her pulse quickened as she read it. He had written about small things, how he appreciated her patience, how her laughter brightened the house, how he felt at home around her. He ended the note simply, I hope it's okay that I'm here. I like it, being near you. Emily folded the note with trembling hands. She felt a rush of emotions, gratitude, relief, fear, and a gentle warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. She realized that Ethan's presence was more than help or companionship. It was an invitation to feel again, to open herself to life and connection despite the lingering sadness. That day when Ethan came home from class, she was waiting in the living room. I got your note, she said softly. His eyes widened, and he smiled nervously. Did it upset you? No, she replied, her voice steady. It made me realize something, that I don't have to carry everything alone. And I like having you here. Ethan's shoulders relaxed, the tension in his face softening. I was worried, he admitted, that you'd think I'm overstepping. You're not, she said, smiling faintly. You've reminded me that life doesn't have to be so heavy all the time, that it's okay to feel joy again, even in small moments. He nodded, standing beside her. For a while, they simply shared the silence. A peaceful quiet filled with understanding and the unspoken promise of companionship. Emily felt something shift in her chest to lightness, a sense of hope, cautious excitement for what could come. As the evening settled into night, she realized that Ethan's presence had changed more than the house. It had shifted the way she felt about herself, her grief, and the possibility of love and connection. For the first time since Daniel's death, Emily allowed herself to hope, even if just a little, that life could feel full again. And while neither of them knew what the future held, they both sensed that the quiet bond forming between them was only the beginning of something new, fragile, and profoundly healing. Emily had spent the past few weeks adjusting to the new rhythm in her home. Ethan's presence was no longer surprising, it had become part of her days. Mornings started with the smell of coffee he brewed, evenings ended with quiet conversations or shared chores. And the house felt alive with laughter and movement again. But beneath the surface of routine, both of them carried feelings that neither had fully voiced. Small touches, lingering looks, and subtle gestures spoke louder than words. They both knew something was growing between them, delicate but impossible to ignore. One morning, Emily came down to find the kitchen unusually quiet. A folded piece of paper rested on the counter, addressed to her in Ethan's familiar handwriting. Her pulse quickened as she unfolded it. The letter was simple yet heartfelt, describing everything he had been unable to say aloud. How much he admired her strength, how her kindness had pulled him closer, and how her presence had quietly filled the emptiness in his own life. Every sentence radiated honesty and care. He admitted that his feelings had grown beyond friendship or obligation, that he didn't want to intrude but couldn't hide what was in his heart. Emily held the letter, her hands trembling. She read it twice, then a third time, letting the words sink in. Tears pricked her eyes not from sadness, but from the intensity of emotions she had been trying to ignore. The truth was undeniable. She cared for Ethan, too. She had tried to dismiss it as gratitude or comfort, but the way her heart had lifted at his smiles, the warmth she felt when he was near, and the safety of his presence all pointed to something deeper. Hours passed before she could summon the courage to speak. When Ethan returned from a quick errand, she was waiting on the porch, letter in hand, her chest tight with anticipation. He noticed immediately, his eyes widening as he stepped closer. "Emily, did you read it?" She nodded, voice soft but steady. "Yes, I read it. Every word." She held the letter out, then tucked it against her chest. "You don't know how much this means to me." Ethan shifted nervously, unsure of how to respond. I didn't know if it was too much. I didn't want to upset you or make things awkward." Emily shook her head. "You could never upset me. You've reminded me that it's okay to feel again, to let someone care for me. For months, I thought I was too broken to notice happiness, but you've changed that. You've brought life back into this house and into my heart." Ethan's face softened, relief washing over him. "So, you want me to stay, even with everything?" "Yes," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "I want you here. I don't know exactly what this means yet, and I don't want to rush anything. But I don't want to push you away either." A gentle smile spread across his face, a mix of hope and tenderness. "I promise. I'll stay and I'll take things slowly. We'll figure it out together." They stood there for a moment, the quiet evening wrapping around them like a blanket. For once, Emily didn't feel alone. The grief that had shattered her for so long was still there, but it no longer defined her. With Ethan, there was a sense of balance, comfort, care, and the fragile beginning of love. In the days that followed, their bond deepened in small, meaningful ways. Ethan helped her organize the old family albums, listening as she shared stories of Daniel and of her own childhood. He encouraged her to resume gardening, kneeling beside her to plant flowers and vegetables while laughing at his own clumsy attempts. Emily noticed how naturally she leaned on him and how naturally he accepted it, always ready to support her without making her feel weak. One afternoon, while arranging flowers in the living room, Ethan paused and looked at her. "Emily, I know this may sound strange, but I feel like I've known you forever. I feel at home when I'm with you." She met his gaze, her heart swelling. "I feel the same. I never imagined it could feel like this again. Not after losing Daniel. But you've changed that. You've reminded me what it means to feel connected to someone." Their hands brushed as they reached for the same vase. Neither pulled away this time. Instead, they lingered, allowing the small touch to convey what words could not. The simple contact was full of trust, care, and the quiet excitement of new beginnings. Evenings became their special time, often spent in the cozy living room with soft music playing. Sometimes they talked about dreams, her desire to travel, plans for a career in engineering, and their shared hope for a peaceful, happy home. Other times they simply sat together, enjoying the silence, feeling each other's presence without the need for words. Emily discovered that these moments, simple yet intimate, were healing her in ways nothing else had. Then came a Sunday morning that would change everything. Emily had prepared breakfast and invited Ethan to join her. As they ate, he reached across the table and took her hand. "Emily, I want you to know something. I've been careful not to rush you, not to push boundaries, but I can't hide it anymore. I care for you, more than I thought possible. And if you feel even a fraction of the same, I want to be here for you, not just as your stepson, but as someone who truly wants to share life with you." Emily felt a rush of emotions fare. Longing, excitement, and relief all mixed together. She realized in that instant that she had been holding back. Not because she didn't care, but because she had been afraid of what life might think. But life, she realized, was too short to deny genuine feelings. She squeezed his hand gently. "Ethan, I care for you too. I was afraid to admit it, but I do. And I want to see where this can go, slowly, carefully, with respect and understanding." He smiled, the tension in his shoulders melting away. "That's all I could ever want." The rest of the day passed in quiet joy. They took a walk in the nearby park, enjoying the crisp autumn air. Leaves crunched underfoot, and the sunlight glimmered through the branches. They talked, laughed, and occasionally fell silent, simply appreciating the comfort of being together. Emily realized how much lighter her heart felt, how much of the heaviness of the past had lifted. Ethan's presence had become not just a source of support, but a source of hope, warmth, and renewed love. That evening, as they returned home, Emily felt an unfamiliar peace settle over her. For months, her grief had been a constant weight, but now it existed alongside something new: possibility. The bond between her and Ethan was fragile, still forming, but it was real and mutual. She understood that life could continue without replacing the past, that it could include someone new without diminishing her memories. Ethan sensed the shift, too. He had been cautious, aware of boundaries and of Emily's grief, but now he felt a quiet confidence. They were no longer just housemates or stepson and stepmother. They were two people discovering a deeper connection built on trust, care, and emotional intimacy. Weeks turned into months, and the house continued to transform, both physically and emotionally. Walls that had once seemed cold and empty now carried warmth, laughter, and life. The rooms echoed with small joys: cooking together, organizing spaces, sharing quiet evenings. Emily noticed that even mundane chores felt lighter, meaningful, when they were done together. And through it all, Ethan remained steady, patient, and loving, never forcing, never rushing. Simply being present. One quiet evening, while Emily was reading on the couch, Ethan came over and sat beside her. He didn't speak at first. He simply leaned slightly closer, and she felt the gentle warmth of his presence. She looked at him, smiling softly. "You've changed this house. And me." He returned her smile, a hint of shyness in his eyes. "And you've changed me. I never expected to feel this way, but I'm grateful. I want to be part of your life if you'll let me." Emily reached out, holding his hand. "You already are. And I want us to figure this out together. Slowly, carefully, with respect for everything we've been through." They sat like that for a while, hand in hand, hearts quiet but full, feeling the depth of what had grown between them. Emily realized that love could emerge in unexpected ways, that connection could heal grief, and that life still held the power to surprise and restore happiness. The house was no longer just a space for memories of the past. It had become a home of possibility. And Emily understood that everything had changed, not because the past was erased, but because someone unexpected had stepped in, gently and patiently. to help her heal and open her heart again. With that, Emily and Ethan faced the future together, cautiously but with hope, ready to explore the quiet, tender love that had bloomed between them. And for the first time in a long while, Emily felt truly alive.